Hello and welcome everyone. Whether it's your first time viewer or you're a regular here, thank you everyone so much for joining. I'm Ariana, your host and a part of the marketing team here at Firearms Legal Protection. Tonight, we're going to be tackling a topic, well, Austin will be tackling the topic that every responsible gun owner should hear. And this is a topic that Austin actually introduced to me. And I thought it was a fantastic idea and just the type of information that he needs to share to our followers and our members and me, which is the 4 forces that may confuse defensive gun users. But let's be honest, most of us are constantly being told what to carry, how to train, what drills to run, and what classes to take. But how much of that advice actually applies to you and your reality and what you might be going through on your day-to-day. Austin, of course, joining us again. He brings decades of experience in law enforcement, emergency response, civilian self-defense training, and he has also trained thousands of individuals in trauma care, tactics, and civilian self-defense training, and on our webinars every month, hundreds of them coming through. He's training us as well, so that's all included there. But he, in this webinar, he'll break down some of the 4 powerful topics that he'll be discussing. Sometimes may be misleading and influences that may steer us defensive gun owners, self-defenders, and all of that off track a little bit. So he'll be here to help sharpen our mindset, strip away any of that confusion that you may have, and also stay focused on what truly matters whenever you're making sure you're prepared to care for yourself and others in an emergency. There'll be a Q&A at the end, so make sure to drop any questions that you have or any comments that you may have in the caption or in the comment section. And remember, this webinar is recorded, so you can rewatch, share with friends or family anytime. Austin, thanks again for joining us for another webinar. Are you ready to get us started and teaching us all what we're here to learn about?
Ariana, I've been doing this stuff forever, and I think that was the most complete introduction ever. It was like, I kept thinking, if she would go like 6 minutes, I'd just call this a night. Thank you very much. Take good care of your wait staff. They're taking good care of you. Thank you very much for that lovely introduction. And hello, my FLP family. Austin K. Davis. The K stands for kindness. Here with you this month. In case you don't know, I'm the National Director of Training for Concealed Coalition. I'm the founder and owner of the Virtual Tactical Academy, and I am a police officer in the state of Texas and a certified field training officer and certified police trainer. The topic this month is a really good one, and I wish I could tell you, guys, I had this genius idea, but I didn't. I stole it. Now remember, you steal an idea from one person, you're a thief. You steal ideas from a lot of people, you're a researcher. This came from an associate of mine named Dustin Solomon. He's written more books than most people I know have read. And this is out of his Building Shooters. And if you haven't ever read Dustin's book, Building Shooters, it's an important book whether you want to learn to shoot better or you just want to be a better golfer or a better tennis player or be able to teach your kids math. It just tells you how the brain works, how we absorb information, and more importantly, how we absorb information, where we put it on there. But in a sort of setup for all this other really great stuff, he came up with like 4 factors that mess up otherwise good guy defenders. And when I first heard this, I was reading this and I was like, it just blew me away because all of a sudden I realized, oh my gosh, this is like, a lot of these are at the core of all the emails and questions I get in class. These are a lot of what I hear in my Virtual Tactical Academy, where I take my simulator and I travel around the country and I deal with people in dynamic judgment, use of force training in my VR machine. And it is something I hear every time I have any of my officers struggling through qualification. So without further ado, let's talk about these 4 things that otherwise mess up good people, gun defenders. The first one is the firearms and firearms accessory manufacturers. Now, full disclosure, I'm all about capitalism, okay? Love me some capitalism. The only problem I've got is if you dig very deep in the firearms world or the firearms accessory world, these people are capitalists. They have something they want to sell. And thank goodness, I was in the holster business for about 25 years, a specialized concealed carry holster. So I understand this. But a lot of times we get these ads and we see these trends and we think, oh my gosh, if I don't have this new widget or I don't have this new firearm, I'm going to die in the streets. And that may or may not be accurate. Now, let's start talking about this. First off, I have nothing against you getting a piece of gear if the piece of gear you got is not working out. Now, what does where does this come into effect? Well, a lot of people tell me all the time things like, well, I'm not shooting really well and I need a better handgun. And let me give you a great example. Let's say you have a common polymer pistol. You have a Smith & Wesson M&P, you have a Glock, maybe you have like an older Ruger P95 or something. And it works, it goes bang, and you can control it and shoot it. But all of a sudden you're at the range one day and I saw it. What did you see? Staccato. Oh my gosh. A $4,000 2011. You walked over, angels are singing. Ah. You ask the person, do you mind if I shoot your fancy gun? They say, sure, no problem. You pick it up and you go, bang, and you're shocked. The hole is exactly where you're looking. You pull the trigger in and bang, and the second hole is right where the first one is. And you're like, oh my gosh, this $4,000 staccato is the answer to my prayers. Maybe yes, maybe no. A couple of things. One of the things is when we talk about a 1911 pattern pistol, it's got a trigger bar. So when you pull the trigger, it goes straight back. Almost every other trigger has a pivot here. And when you pull it, it pivots back and forth. So as you pull, it changes the geometry of the trigger. That's why some people like a flat face trigger a little better. It seems like it's a little more constant in the pull. Now, I'm not saying that a 2011 staccato does not shoot better than a Glock 48 or a 43 or a 19 or a 17 or a 45 or whatever number you're going to come up with. But the question is do you need a $4,000 firearm? And, you know, your standard Glock magazine might go for $24 on sale, whereas that staccato magazine might go for $60. And your Glock magazine and your Glock firearm are going to be a lot more reliable over a period of time. When you start getting a higher performance pistol, it's kind of like buying a BMW or a Porsche. Yeah, they are higher performance, but the brakes tend to wear out a little quicker. Suspension is more expensive. We need to replace it. So am I against people spending money on a new piece of gear? No. But first off, just ask yourself before, because I get this question all the time. Austin, I want a new gun. Okay, what do you want? I want a whatever. Let's just say staccato and keep with the theme. And I say, fine. I say, what are you trying to do with that? And they go, I just shoot that gun better. Well, then I have to start asking them, what gun do you have now? Does it fit? Okay. Is it overly complicated, or is the trigger unmanageable for you because you can't reach it, or just the ergonomics, the way it works, your hand just don't work out? 9 times out of 10, I get, no, it's fine. I shoot better with that gun. But then we have to start asking them, well, how much time have you spent learning to shoot the gun you've got? You know, I know a lot of people that only shoot once, twice a year, maybe 200-300 rounds. So before we go spend $4,000 on a staccato, we could spend $500 or $600 on a new firearm. Right now, 9mm ammo is about $250 per 1,000. So you get about 2,000 rounds of ammo, a nice holster, and a 3-day class, and a couple of spare magazines, and still have money left over, and probably be a whole lot safer. If you did decide to go to a more complicated firearm like a staccato, or maybe one of the Beretta 92s, which has got a decocking lever on it, you now have to incorporate in your head a whole new set of things. Problem with 1911 is you got to remember to take the thumb safety off, put the thumb safety back on, and also that trigger is really unforgiving of stupid or careless mistakes. It'll tend to go off real easy. So what makes for a good shooting gun and a piece of paper may make for a negligent situation with real people at the other end of that thing. So it's something to think about. So first thing will mess up a good person is, man, I need to have this or this or this. Let's talk about one more thing before we leave the manufacturer problems, and that is holster manufacturers. There is no escaping the fact that a good holster makes a big difference. Tenacor, Filster, they all make one, or tier 1 holsters, all make great holsters. I do think that a holster is something you probably need to buy a lot of, because if you spend any time in the concealed carry world, you're probably going to end up with a whole drawer full of holsters that just didn't work out until you find just the one. For me, it's Tenacor. Once I reach one of those, my world stopped. So the first thing we have to do is we have to understand you can't buy skill, you can't buy competence, and you can't buy competence. So do you need to buy a piece of gear to be safer? Maybe yes, maybe no. The next thing, though, is elite units. Now, where does this come in? Well, a lot of times you will decide that, wow, what I really need, Austin, it's not the gun. It's I've got to go to one of these tier one operators and go to a 3 or a 5 day school, shoot 1,000, 1,500 rounds, and they're going to teach me these super secret ninja tricks, which are going to make me safer. Now, let me start with some basics here. I got mad respect for people who have reached tier one elite status. These are just unique human beings, the same way Olympic athletes are unique human beings, professional basketball and baseball players, unique people, almost separate human beings, and they are. They're in programs that probably wiped out 75% of the applicants just to get to start to train. Many of these elite units, they will shoot more in a week than my whole police department will shoot in a year. Many of these people have extraordinary skills that work really well in a variety of environments, but those skill sets that they're teaching may or may not be applicable to you. Part of the reason why they work for them is because they are exceptional athletes. They've been through exceptional stress inoculation training. They have gone through heavy repetition, and a lot of what they learn works with other highly motivated, highly skilled, highly intelligent, highly athletic, reasonably young people that may not relate to somebody who's got bad knees, who's not in great physical shape, who's by themselves in a parking lot or a gas station at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock at night. Having said that, if you've never been to a week-long shooting school where you put a lot of rounds on target, got a lot of trigger time in there, I'm all for it. The only problem I've got is a lot of people then tend to cling on to that tier one operator. Pick your famous person that on the internet who's doing this, and they tell me, Austin, I am a lot more survivable because I spent a week with fill-in tier one operator here. That's great, but there's a thing called the illusion of learning. It'd be a little like you going to a fantasy football camp and then after a week there going, I can go play in the NFL and I can throw a ball like Drew Brees because I went to an NFL football camp. If you go to one of these schools, you're probably going to get something great out of it. But remember, the great thing you're getting out of this is not some super secret ninja technique that makes them a super tier one operator, because what I've learned is tier one operators, they're highly trained. And for me, training means you can perform that skill on demand under duress without exception. See the difference between a professional and amateur? Amateurs will do things until they get it right. A professional will do things until they cannot get it wrong. And the problem is when you go to one of those schools, that is great. You get a bunch of trigger time, get a bunch of different experience. You might be able to be in an environment where you get to shoot and move, which I think is really a nice transferable skill. But the problem is when you come out of there, are you going to still keep that training up? Because remember, shooting a handgun is not a natural thing. It's a perishable skill. And all skills need to have 3 R's in them. Need to be recent, relevant, and realistic. And even in the best of those shooting schools, you're still shooting a piece of paper standing still or even on the move that does not shoot back, and you don't have to target discriminate in this. So I think there's a real fault in the system where you say, I went to an elite school built by a tier one person, and therefore I'm like a tier one person. Again, kind of like going to football camp. Now, competitive shooters. Now, look, I'm all about fast and accurate shooting. Tactics are all good because they'll get you to the point where marksmanship matters. If you can't put rounds where you want them and can be responsible for every round you fire, there's a problem. I think that the competitive shooting world is offering a whole lot to us as defensive shooters. I think these people really understand fast and accurate shooting. The only problem is once you get into that activity as sort of a hobby or a passion, however you want to phrase it, the problem is you are learning to shoot much faster than you can process in the real world. For me, the important difference between a competitive shooter and a defensive shooter is every time I press a trigger, this has to be a threat assessment situation with every trigger pull. If I'm justified in shooting 3 and I shoot 2 more, those first 3 might be defensible. Those last 2 might be a homicide. So am I against competitive shooting? No. Do I think you should competitive shoot? Yes. I think 2, 3, 4, 5 times a year running out and doing a competitive shooting would be wonderful. The thing I want to be careful of, though, if you get into competitive shooting is we wear the same gear and use the same firearm we are going to be in the real world with. If you have your fancy tricked out space gun, race gun that's compensated in the whole bit, but you shoot this gun really well because remember, all guns are too big to carry and too small to shoot, but you carry in your pocket a 5-shot revolver or a little tiny pistol. When you go compete, use that gear with your concealed rig. Now, a lot of you are saying, but I'll never win at that. It's not about winning. It's about putting you in a situation where a bunch of eyeballs are looking at you and you're under stress. I don't care how dialed in you are. The first time you step up to that line, the 15th or the 1,000th time, everybody watching you go shoot, put some good pressure on you, and you're accountable for every shot. And it gives you a chance to move and shoot and assess things. But if you get too into it and you spend too much time on working on that sub 1 second draw stroke with fire, make sure you get that sub 1 second draw stroke and not fire. Because a lot of times we pull a gun, we get compliance, but if you pull the gun and you're only dialed into gun and shoot, you may find yourself in a hole that you can't dig yourself out of. So am I against competitive shooting? Of course not. Is it a wonderful hobby? It's a fantastic hobby. Some of the nicest people you will ever meet are hardcore competitive shooters, without a doubt. Wonderful people. But remember, if you're taking it as a hobby, that's one thing. If you're using it to become better in the defensive world, though, you may not want to focus so much on the win, but on the quality of training. And instead of doing that sort of weird body thing to work around cover, you may want to get in a really good position. Yes, it costs you time, but you're exposing a lot less. No, you're not going to win the cup or the trophy, but what good's it winning a cup? You're not going to drink out of it or whatever. But it has its application. But if you try to convert everything you learn in the competitive world, that could be a real problem. So we got manufacturers, we got elite trainers, we got competitive shooters. What is the final of the fourth thing that can kind of mess us up as good guy defenders? It's legal defense for self-defense policies. Oh man, it's like the noise you make when you take the record and needle and scratch the record as it's playing. It's not about legal defense for self-defense policies. You heard me say it before, maybe every time you've heard me speak. I would not carry a firearm defensively as a non-sworn person if I did not have firearms legal protection. Fantastic, guaranteed, no stop. Same with my wife. I would tell her, look, you can't carry a firearm if you don't have legal defense or self-defense because you got to win the fight after the fight. My son, my brother, all protected by FLP. Firm believer in it. But here's the problem. When I'm at my virtual tactical academy, which I've been running since about 2011, I've been running this long before I think even FLP became a thing. Whenever somebody messes up, it's not uncommon when they mess up in a scenario. Remember, it's okay to mess up in a virtual reality scenario. That's what it's for, to make mistakes that don't cost you anything that you can learn from. Remember, it's like that great gunfighter the Dalai Lama says, it's okay to lose, just don't lose the lesson. But a lot of times when they make a mistake and shoot the wrong person for the wrong reason, mistake of fact shooting, a lot of us will turn to me and go, well, that's what I have my FLP for. I'm like, no. Now, does FLP have good lawyers? Yes. Are they vetted? Yes. If they have trial experience before they get brought into the policy? Yes. But the problem is they are not Jedi warriors going to the jury. This is not the conviction you're looking for. So we have to make sure we stay within our bounds. So do you need a legal defense for self-defense, especially in today's world? 100%. But just because you have a policy does not mean it's a get out of jail free card, stay out of prison free card, don't lose everything I own free card, don't become a social pariah. So what I need you to understand is every time you decide you're going to pull, point, or fire your gun, you are entering into a legal system. And this is something you don't want to get messed up with. And people always tell me all the time, I don't want to go to jail. Jail ain't your problem. Trust me, going to jail is no big deal. I shouldn't say it. It's not as big a deal. Prison, that's a big deal. Jail, we can get you out of there. We can bond out unless some extraordinary things happen. You need to make sure that even though you have your policy and it's as good as it gets, you always make sure there's 5 things that you do before you have any use of force. Because if you cannot prove each one of these in court, you're going to be in a heap of trouble. Number 1, innocence. That means you didn't start it. You didn't escalate it. You didn't invite it. And there's a lot of things you can do in the real world, which you can start off as an innocent person, but your actions or your inactions can be taken as you losing your ability to say your innocence. Imminence. Right now, not I'm gonna go to my house and get my gun and shoot you tomorrow, or you messed with me last week. I mean right now, meaning if I don't do something, I'm gonna suffer serious bodily injury or death right now. And understand that imminence is like a window or a door. It opens and closes. So even if somebody came in and shot up your house of worship and you pull your Smokemaster 3000, they see it, they throw the gun down, throw their hands up, you can't shoot them. But they just shot up my house of worship. I got that. But if you point a gun, you get compliance, you better have a plan, and that plan better not be, I put a bullet in them. R, you must be reasonable. You don't have to be perfect in your response, but you have to be reasonable. That's subjective and objective, reasonable. has to be avoidable. Some of you are going, I don't need avoidable. I got stand my ground and I got castle doctrine. Look, these are nice and they offer you certain protections, but some juries and judges can slide right past that. So if you can solve your problem by shutting the door, closing your car door, driving away, de-escalating it verbally, take the win. There's no better win than that. And finally, proportional. If all you do is carry a gun and somebody comes up and slaps you or starts punching on you, depending on the circumstances, that may be something that only needs reasonable force, not deadly force. And if you don't have an intermediate use of force of weapon, which is empty hand skills, a flashlight, I'm not talking about the one on your phone, I mean a powerful defensive flashlight or a pepper spray, you might have nothing between profanity and a pistol, and you may jump to a level that is not proportional. So if it's the firearms, accessories, and people, elite military and law enforcement trainers, competition shooters, and the legal defense for self-defense that mess you up, what saves you? Well, funny you should ask that question, or I should ask it for you, because I'm writing a book in that subject right now called Guns Don't Win Gunfights. This is my 4th book, and this is by far my favorite one I've ever written. See, I don't think guns win gunfights. I think there's 3 things that do win gunfights. Number 1, dynamic decision makers. The problem is when you are put into a situation, if you don't have situational awareness, if you can't read, recognize, and react properly to the situation, you're behind the curve. The problem with going to a range and shooting a piece of paper is it's great training for, see, when you go to a range, you're shooting a piece of paper standing still in a well-lit, well-controlled environment at the lowest cognitive ability. And that's great training for standing still and shooting a piece of paper in a well-lit, well-controlled environment at the lowest cognitive ability. If you're in these situations, you're going to be in a dynamic decision-making mode. And the problem with dynamic decision-making is we'll never have enough time or enough information for our brains to be happy. So we have to learn how to go with what we've got. And that means you want to preload as many decisions as possible. You want to preload as many verbal scripts as possible. And you want to preload what your go and no-go button is going to be. And without training with that and being able to pressure test it and see where the wheels come off, that's why I like virtual reality. That's why I like force on force with simunition guns. You're at a deficit. The second thing that won't mess you up is having good procedural skills. Now, let me ask you a question. When I shoot a firearm, a semi-automatic firearm, the way this works is the top part, the slide, reciprocates back and forth. Now, if I get trained to shoot and I get a proper grip, this gun will work just fine. What I've noticed is a large percentage of my students, when they shoot in the simulator, will put their thumb behind it. What I find really interesting is none of these people ever went to the range and did that more than once. Do you know why we call that self-correcting behavior? Actually, it doesn't hurt. It's really not a lot of energy here, but it does create a shooter-induced malfunction. But what's interesting is when I show them, I stop them right there and I go, why are you shooting that way? They look at me really weird. The reason they're shooting that way is they've never shot under pressure. It's literally the first time I've ever shot a gun. And this is a primal, not a programmed response. And the point of this is if you have never trained under pressure, you won't be able to perform under pressure. You may have heard this before, but in a dynamic situation, we will not rise to our level of expectations. We will fall to our lowest level of training. If you never train under stress, any behavior not learned under stress is not easily or impossible to recall under stress. So we have to stress inoculate you. Again, one of those things that makes the elite tier 1 instructors a lot better is because they understand that. They've been there. Even if they've never been in actual combat, they've been in enough situations and training that is so real. Their brain can't tell it's a real and carefully imagined event. And the more you sweat in training, the less you bleed in combat. So the next thing you want to do is you want to have good procedural skills that work. If you have to think about how to clear your garment, draw your gun, that's a problem. If you have to think about how to get your grip so that you have good pressure concentrically around it, that's a problem. If you have a hard time with trigger management, keep your finger off the trigger, or you slap that trigger like it wants to date your sister and owes you money, that's a problem. And if you don't have good visual characteristics with your sighting system, whether it's a dot or whether it's iron sights, and for me, good visual reference means my eyes are ahead of the gun. I need to be focused on where I want the bullet to go and what's the bad guy's doing. If I focus back here, there's going to be a real problem. Does that mean that I don't aim? No, but that means that the sighting, I aim with my body. I just confirm with my sights. I want you to think about that for a second. We don't aim with the sights on a gun. We aim with proper index. And once you get good, you can point and you just have to just last minute, just confirm through your sighting system. And remember, your eyes are offset. They can only converge in one spot. So if I'm looking down there and they converge that the person is trying to hurt me or kill me or cause me serious or permanent bodily injury, that means I can see what's going on. If I converge them back here, everything is blurry. So I can't tell what the situation is doing, whether it's getting riskier or it's getting safer for me. So we want to make sure that you have good procedural skills that run automatically. So when you think I need gun, we don't have to pay any attention to this thing. And the last of the 3 tips that really will save you against those other 4 things is having emotional control. You see, if you go into this situation and we want you in challenge state, not threat state. If you're in challenge state, it is, hey man, I got this situation, I need to resolve it. That's easy. If you're in threat state, it's, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening to me. Why is this person doing to me? All these things are ineffective at getting you out of what you're in. And no one's coming to save you. You need to be your own first responder. So we need to be thinking, what's important now? When? What's my next move? We need to be having those pre-done plans that we spend some time beforehand, making those decisions, and then staying in control so we can execute and then go ahead and either smooth this thing over or project enough force that they decide they don't want to play anymore and the threat calms down. Now, this is a whole lot to cover into it, but there's one final thing. If there's 4 things that'll mess you up, there's 4 things that'll save you. 1 is dynamic decision making, 2, sound procedural skills, solid basics, number 3, emotional control, and number 4 is please train not only how to shoot somebody, but how to deal with the fight after the fight. And a lot of you are going, I don't need to do that. I've got my FLP plan. The problem with that is the 911 phone call is the most important phone call you'll make in your life. And if you don't train in that, you're going to mess it up. How are you going to mess it up? You're making a recorded call to law enforcement. You can't amend or alter. You don't have a lawyer present. You're jacked up on stress chemicals. You never practice it. Wow, I don't know how that happens. Number 2, when the police officer shows up on scene, you need to have a plan on how to deal with them. I'll give you a hint. Number 1, don't have a gun in your hand. Number 2, be prepared to follow their orders. Then you need to be prepared to make your statement with them, whether 1 of 2 strategies. Either I'm saying nothing or I'm going to say very little. And if you say nothing, there's some good points and some bad points about that. That's in both my de-escalation book and it's also my situation awareness book. If you want to say very little, make sure you know exactly where those boundaries are. And when it comes time for an investigator to talk to you, the only answer you should be giving is, I'm sorry, I don't answer any questions without my lawyer present. This is a lot to cover, but it's important stuff. If your firearm is working for you, but you don't know how to work your firearm, think of it like a guitar. I have a guitar in my house. I don't know how to play it. But if you brought Eric Clapton over here and it was a $50 Walmart guitar or it was a $5,000 custom-made guitar, he'd be able to play either one equally well. Me, it doesn't matter. When you know you need new gear is if your gear is holding you back or it's not reliable or it is just too big or too small to work with you. Too small to work with you? I have like almost a 2X hand. So when I have little tiny pistols, I have a hard time controlling them. So for a gun for me, it has to be a certain size. For some people, really small hands, a gun can be too big. Kind of like shoes, you know? I like my shoes, you like your shoes, but my shoes and your shoes won't work if our feet are not the same length and width. So what I want you to start understanding is, yes, maybe you need a new piece of gear, probably not. If you need training, that's great. Make sure though it's recent, relevant, and realistic. If you want to go to tier 1 operator and get your basics down, I've got no problem with that. But just understand, pick that instructor very carefully. Make sure not only are they somebody who did amazing things or are still doing amazing things, but they're also good at instructing people who may not have the same physical capabilities or the same vetting system to even start showing up in class, and make sure that they understand your needs are not exactly the same needs as a young man who's jumping out of airplanes or locking out of submarines. Competitive shooting is great, but if you're there, remember what you're there to do. If you're a defensive shooter, it's not to pick up a new hobby, is to be able to produce that skill on demand under stress, and have a quantifiable way to measure it. We can't improve and we can't manage, we can't measure. And then finally, if you have a legal defense for self-defense policy, and if you're watching this, I hope you have one. I hope it's FLP. It's my favorite, and I can quantify why I think that's the best. Make sure that you know every time you use a gun, we have to prove all 5 elements of self-defense: innocence, imminence, reasonable, avoidable, and proportional. With that, I'd like to finish this part of the conversation the way I like to finish every conversation. Be a guardian always, and a warrior when needed.
I'm back, and that was fantastic. Every time you surprise me, I'm just like, yep, this is great information as always. But thank you, Austin, for breaking all of that down. There's so much advice out there, some good, some not so helpful. And I think everyone watching definitely has a clearer idea of what actually matters when it comes to carrying and defending responsibly. I know for sure that I at least know the better parts of everything, because I know when I walked out of my LTC class years ago, I was given so much information afterwards, which was all very valuable, but I didn't know what everything I needed to do with it. But like Austin mentioned just right now and earlier in the webinar, and went over very well, in real world defense incidents, it's not just about gear or mindset. It's also about being legally protected too. because even if you do everything right, there's a good chance you still have to deal with law enforcement attorneys or even court proceedings afterwards, which is a lot to deal with, especially after going through something traumatic like that. And that's exactly why Firearms Legal Protection exists. And we offer legal defense for self-defense for members who use any weapon. So it could be a firearm, knife, chair, whatever you pick up to defend yourself. If you're defending yourself, we're going to be there to protect you after. So if you carry to protect yourself or loved ones, we're here to protect you legally in the aftermath. So before we move on into the Q&A, we have some really good pre-submitted questions that we'll go through. Well, Austin will go through. I'll just be here telling you what the question is. If you have any questions, make sure to submit them in the comment. But I'll take a quick minute to explain how Firearms Legal Protection membership works and how it could be the missing piece to your self-defense plan as well.
Firearms Legal Protection offers several different memberships to whoever is interested in signing up for legal protection. These plans are divided into individual plans and a family plan, which some benefits and pricing vary state by state. For the purposes of this webinar, we will look at our most common plans and benefits that are available in most states. The individual basic plan includes protection in your state of residence. It also includes uncapped payment of attorney fees for defense of criminal and civil cases. Firearms Legal Protection memberships also extend to all legal weapons, including non-lethal weapons. With the individual basic plan, you also have Defense of Extreme Risk Protection Orders, also known as red flag laws. All plans have access to the 24/7 emergency attorney answered hotline, so no matter a time an incident may occur, you can count on our hotline and an attorney will pick up for immediate attorney-client privileges. You also have access to the MyFLP mobile app and one of our recently added benefits, expungement of criminal record on non-conviction incidents. Members of all plans also receive access to digital content and special discounts. The next step up is the individual premium plan. This plan has nationwide coverage and also includes all the benefits just mentioned and payment of bail bond premium, payment of expert witness and investigator fees if either are needed in your case. There's also coordination of counseling support, payment of lost wages if you are out of work during trial, and a list of other benefits. We also have the family premium plan to choose from for those who want the same protection also applied to their family. For just a little bit more, you get all the benefits that were just mentioned applied to your spouse and all minor children. If you want more information over these benefits, then check out our Instagram or Facebook page for uploaded explained benefit videos. Remember, if you, friends, or family are not already protected by Firearms Legal Protection, please click the link below for a special discount we offer our webinar viewers. Now, let's get back to today's webinar.
All right, we're back. Let's go through some of these pre-submitted questions. Okay, first one, how do I carry when some properties locations prohibited on premises, trying to speak and read at the same time, lawfully under my rights, am I able to leave it in my locked vehicle?
As always, I'm going to answer this, and it's a perfect answer. It depends. And the way I would address this is get on my FLP app. You good with this answer? Yeah. Now, if you do want to leave it in your car, a couple things. Number one, if you know you're going to a place where you're not going to be able to take the firearm in with you, I don't really like you standing outside your trunk, taking your gun in front of gosh and everybody and putting it in your locked case or your glove box or whatnot. Get a good lockbox. This is one of my favorites, and it's got a cable, so I can put the cable here attached to a hard point in the car. If you just put your pistol in a lockbox, it just gives them a container to take the pistol out when they break into your car. Also, make sure there's nothing on your vehicle that says there's a gun in the car. I love my NRA, but you leave an NRA sticker that says there's a gun in the car. If you've got anything in your car. And if you don't believe me, this is a really important point. I forgot what the number of firearms stolen every year, but the large percentage of them are stolen out of vehicles. Next time you're at a Walmart or Target parking lot walking around, just go, if I needed a gun, could I get one in this parking lot? It's something I used to do with my students. What's really interesting is you can go around and you can find a clue that says there's a gun in this car. So get a lockbox, don't take it in those things, because remember, as I tell people all the time when I'm taking them to jail, dude, secret to crime is only do one felony at a time. When you have that second charge, this is really bad. So if the rules are the rules, we're good people defenders, we have to follow them. So that means lock the gun up. But don't keep the gun in a condition that can get stolen. Make sure you don't expose it when you take it off of you and lock it up in there in your vehicle. And if you do lock it in your vehicle, make sure it's in a locked container and that container is tied to some hard metal point in the vehicle. Good question.
Great answer. All right. Next question. How do I know if a new gun or accessory is truly worth upgrading to, or if I'm just falling for the marketing?
Ooh, this is a tough one, because the people who sell the guns and accessories, they know how to market to you. Now, if it is a firearm, I would really like you to go ahead and at least handle the gun first to make sure that you can reach the trigger, work the controls, that it's not such a heavy thing that you can't rack it without going through some sort of gyration. If that's at all possible, if you go to a lot of ranges, you can rent a lot of these firearms you want, maybe find a friend. But really what you want to ask yourself is this: is my skill holding me back, or the equipment? And what level am I trying to get to? Because there's a certain diminishing point of returns. If you have a 1.5 second consistent draw stroke, it takes a lot of work to get to under a second. And maybe that half second really makes a difference. I'd really rather you spend more time learning situational awareness so you can read, recognize, and be ready to react well in advance and not need that split second draw stroke. And your holster, if your holster's not working, or your carry system not working with you, and your carry system may not be a holster, it may be the lockbox in your house, and you may go, my gosh, I have sweaty fingers and my fingerprint ID doesn't always work there, or I don't have a fingerprint ID, I've got the code thing. Well, make sure you practice doing the code thing or the fingerprint thing under pressure, because if you need it in the home, you may be behind the curve. So if you're not having an easy time getting your firearm, make sure you go back to our home safety webinar we did and understand it should be a layered defense. They should have to break a lot of glass, split it all the way to get to you. Hopefully you should have time to get to your firearm. So it's a tough question. It's a tough question, especially with holsters, because there's no way to tell it except you got to wear it. And after a while, it's either, the heavens gift to you to make this thing carry it in virtual of a gunfight, bring the gun. Second rule, if it doesn't fit your lifestyle, hurts, awkward, uncomfortable, you won't bring the gun. So hopefully that answers.
Yeah, absolutely. It did. All right. Next question. Are there any specific accessories that actually make a real difference in a self-defense scenario?
101%. Defensive flashlight and a pepper spray. When I go on patrol, I've got an external vest, so this much of me is protected from ballistic trouble, hopefully. But I've got a flashlight, I've got a baton, I may have a taser on me, I've got spare magazines. Actually, I have 2 flashlights. I've got maybe a backup gun. I got all this other stuff. So I can scale the violence to whatever I need it to. We need something between a pistol and profanity, and that's a pepper spray. In about 85% of the cases, your firearm's going to be 100% the wrong tool. So really and truly, and in the 15% when you need a gun, it is the only tool available. But really having good verbal de-escalation skills, good situation awareness skills, an intermediate weapon, which is pepper spray. Some people are really good with BJJ in their hands. My problem is that works really well if you're young and flexible. Only one of them, and you're not rolling on the ground, because rolling on concrete parking lots is real different than rolling in the dojo. So I really think that, and then in low light environments, a blast of light to the face can solve a lot of problems. Walking out your car, dudes roll up behind you. Whoops, sorry, I didn't see you. Shine it right in their eyes. Take out their visual horizon. Lower it down to their chest. They get goofy, go right on back up in. Even if you have to draw your gun and put it away one-handed, you've taken away their visual horizon. So a good defensive flashlight, a good pepper spray, a good holster, but really and truly the soft skills of situation awareness and de-escalation, you should be set.
Yeah. I like when you said, or when they get goofy, just bring it right back up. Exactly. Okay. Next question. I've been told to train for speed like competition shooters. Is that actually helpful or harmful in self-defense?
We covered this in there, but this is a great question. I think it's worth really repeating again. I'm not against fast and accurate shooting. If you have these 2 things, if you ever have to go to a gun, you have speed and accuracy, and either one you leave, the other person can exploit. So if you're a really great shot, but it takes you 30 minutes to make it, that doesn't help. If you're really fast, but you miss and you kill little Billy down the parking lot, that's a problem too. So competition shooting really does allow you to shoot in there. The problem I've got is it doesn't make you discriminate between when the use of force is necessary and when it's not. Yes, there's different color targets, but those are all probably pre-programmed in there. So again, if you want to use competition as a training tool, make sure it's the gun you carry and the holster you carry, and then use that training, even though you won't win the grand trophy on that thing, but you can get good, solid reps in it. And the great thing is you're going to meet wonderful people. Again, some of the nicest people I've ever met are competitive shooters. These are really, because they're all safety minded, they're all into the same thing, you are, guns, and they like shooting fast and accurate. They're really good people. But don't get so caught up in this that you pick up some habits that means you're starting to shoot faster than you can process each trigger pull. And if you shot 5,000 rounds in competition this year, and all of a sudden you go where you have to count for every shot, it may be difficult for you to back off that speed. It may turn into something that's sort of a program, not primal response.
Absolutely. All right. Next question. How can I get value from high-level training without adopting tactics that don't make sense for civilian defense?
Pick your instructors very carefully. Again, I have nothing against tier 1 operators. I have nothing against competitive shooters, but that may not relate to you. Remember, training is always going to have 3 things: recent, relevant, and realistic. Recent, these are perishable skills. If you don't practice the thing you spent a week burning 1,500, 2,000 rounds through, you may be shocked in 30 days how little of this retention you got. Force Science Institute did a study where they took police cadets who went through the full firearms training. And about 6 months after they get out of the academy, they really have no more skill sets with a firearm if they didn't continually practice and hone that skill set than just a novice, someone who's never picked up a gun. So the next thing, is it recent? Is it relevant to what you're doing? If this involves a lot of running, gunning, and reloading and shooting your AR in all kinds of weird spots, that may be wonderful if you're going to be on a SWAT team or a tier 1 unit. That may not really relate to what's going on with you. So pick your instructor very carefully, and often ask yourself a question, no matter who you pick as instructor: does this make sense? If you ask them questions and they get defensive or angry, you're in the wrong place. Because whenever you ask us anything as an instructor, we need to be able to go, hey, I need to examine, is this stuff really working for what my student wants? Also, one of the good signs you'll find with instructors before they start, they're always going to ask the class, what are you here for? What do you need to accomplish when you leave here to feel like you're safe? What do you need to have? And then as we're going through the thing, even though we have a certain program thing we have to do, especially in live fire, we always have that in the back of our head to go, okay, this is a single parent who's got 2 small children. I've got to be able to think about how to be an armed parent with them. That may be real different. Or I've got somebody who's professionally in an occupation where they have to carry a gun so small because they can never, ever have themselves sort of brandish the firearm or have it print. So I've got to go, look, they would shoot better with better gear or bigger gear, but they've got to work with this. And I have to make sure that my training can adapt to them. It's about making the student better, not just getting my techniques down. So pick your instructor carefully and ask a lot of questions, and then look for the feedback.
Absolutely. I never have feedback whenever you're answering all the questions. I'm just like, But you always hit all the topics, right? But we have a couple more questions left. This one: how do I know if a class is teaching skills appropriate for my everyday carry lifestyle versus tactical fantasy?
One of the simplest things is how much time they spend talking to you about reloading. John Correa, your favorite guy and my favorite guy, talks about this. He doesn't carry a reload, and he's watched, 50,000 scenarios. He can't find a situation where a civilian needed a reload. So one of the things you have to do is you have to understand it has to be recent, it has to be relevant and realistic. Relevant and realistic are really closely related. So if you're doing a whole lot of just weird things that don't relate to your lifestyle, you probably picked the wrong class. So you may want to go ahead and see some YouTubes of this instructor and how they taught before. If there's not that available when you're talking to the instructor, kind of ask them what is going to be the curriculum. And every instructor should know, if you're doing a live fire training, exactly what every round's going to be done. I do very little live fire training. I really like using a simulator for a lot of reasons. And if you ask me when I'm coming there, I'm asking you what you're trying to get. And then also, at any point in time, you can ask me a question about how does this relate to my situation. And a lot of times when you ask that, I kind of go, the way you ask that question, I may need to use one of the other 1,000 scenarios I've got that's more related to you. Classic example, I had somebody recently who was a pharmacist, and they get robbed a lot. And so this person had a very different set of concerns than one of my armed parents in the class. So I had to kind of go through my little mental Rolodex of all my scenarios and go, I've got some stuff that I think would work really well with you. We put a table in front of them which matches this. And so you want someone who is going to understand who has to ask you feel comfortable telling, and you feel that there's a reasonable chance they will apply what you ask them and what they heard and what they can adapt their training to your needs, not just to meet their curriculum.
All right. 2 more questions left. If anyone has any other ones, make sure you put them in the comments. There was just a lot of good feedback about you. I mean, there weren't any comments in there yet or questions, just a lot of comments. This question: what's one thing I can do in my training this month to avoid falling into these 4 traps?
That's a good question. And let me tell you what, do me a favor, Ariana, make a note of this. We need to do a whole webinar on just this one question, because I've got a whole thing that I train my people in, and you may pick some of it up if you're a Concealed Collision University graduate, one of the first things is I need you to get in a quiet place, put your phone away, get a cup of coffee, can of beer, soda, whatever you like. Take about 5 minutes and relax. And once you relax, start to imagine the quintessential reason why you carry a gun for defensive purposes. If you only have it in the house, imagine somebody kicking in your door and you shooting them. And if you're not comfortable with that at that level, we got a real problem. Start thinking about, when you would be in a situation if you use a gun and get real comfortable with it. Next thing is you can fix a lot of your problems with your gear instead of buying new gear, as long as it goes bang and it does what it's supposed to do. If you got a really crummy gun that's not going bang, we got a problem. Because remember, reliability is number one. Everything else is after that. You can do a whole lot of dry firing. And then reality-based training is the key to all this stuff. Any behavior not learned under stress can't be recalled under stress. And I need to put you in a place where the wheels come off. And when I see the wheels coming off, I stop you and I go, Ariana, what's going on? What are you hearing? What are you seeing? What are you thinking? You tell me, and I go, never thought of that. Keep on going. But 9 times out of 10, I go, hey, how about this, this, and this? And you go, does that make sense? You go, yeah. I go, would you like to do the scenario again and start it all over? Yeah. Run them right back to the beginning and let them go on through it. It's sort of like the movie Top Gun, the fighter's weapons school. If you get enough simulated dogfights, you do really well in the real world. We want to put you in a situation where you have to think. You have to make dynamic decisions. We have to pressure test to make sure your skills are solid. And then I can keep you in emotional control so that your brain doesn't go offline in the middle of this thing. Because if it goes offline, your response can be primal, not programmed. I want to make sure the good programming's in there.
Yeah, yeah. All right, last question, and then we'll wrap it up. If I already feel overwhelmed by conflicting advice, how do I reset and build the right habits?
That's a good one. I could almost do a whole 30-minute webinar on just that. Well, that's the emotional control. Try to separate signal from noise and figure out what applies to your life. Think about the 5 or so people that you need to defend, and then define yourself as those are the only people I'll use lethal force to protect. Really, when you start getting conflicting advice with reset, you need to find out what's important to you to protect, and then what you're also willing to go to prison or get injured for. Let me give you a good example. I'm a coffee drinker, okay? I make my own coffee because I'm cheap. But let's say I go to the same barista every day. So I walk in the coffee shop. Hi, Mary. Mary goes, hi, Austin. I get my coffee every day. Hi, Mary. Hi, Austin. This goes on week after week. One day I come in and go, hi, Mary. And she goes, hi, Austin. I go, what's wrong? Oh, I've got a bad illness and it could be terminal. I go, oh, that's horrible. Is there anything I could do? And they go, yeah, you can go to prison for 10 years. You can cash out your 401k. You can become a social pariah. You have to move out of your house because the relatives are going to come and take you out. And that would really help me. I go, I'm going to get my coffee elsewhere. But when you get involved in a third person incident, that's kind of what you're doing. They're going, look, I've got a life and death problem and I need you to get involved. I need you to risk your freedom. I need you to risk your financial freedom. I need you to risk being a social pariah or a permanent injury or death. And by having these overwhelming conflicting advices, you're forgetting what's important, what you're trying to protect. And there are certain people on my list, I've only got 5 of them, that I will gladly die or go to prison to save. And if I mess up and they get injured or killed, I would rather be in prison, injured or dead than failing those people. Past that, I'm an excellent witness. I make a lovely 911 phone call. But you need to decide what's important to you and where your limits are on what you protect and who you will protect and how far you'll go to protect them. Good question. That's a very deep question. Whoever wrote that one, you're thinking well. You're thinking, I can tell from your question, you don't think you got it figured out. You're a lot farther having it figured out than you think. Just the fact you thought of that question tells me you're way ahead.
That's awesome. That was
your audience. You're sharper than your average bear. Mm-hmm.
Well, you had a great answer for it, so that's why we have you on.
Iron sharpens iron. That's what we're doing here. Group mindset.
Exactly.
I love people.
I love it.
Hug right now.
Right. Okay, well, that was the last question. I didn't see any others in the comments or anything. Before I wrap it up, do you have any last comments, remarks, or anything for our viewers?
Guys, we are in a situation right now that I'm very concerned about. We did earlier this year, we did a webinar on a possible terrorism threat here. I'm involved in some projects to try to help mitigate that in some ways. I'm also an alert instructor. I don't know if the current war situation we've got is going to do one of 2 things, either cut the head off the snake or light the fuse on a problem. I would give it a 50-50 coin shot. I can't tell. But right now, if you didn't catch our webinar on terrorism and possibility of it coming to our country, let's call it 9/11 2.0. I think it might be worth going on there, something to think about. I would be very careful, have a plan on how to get your family back, how to function if your cell phone towers go down, or we have power outages, or we got to hunker down in place. I hope this doesn't come, but if it is going to come, it's coming soon. So just be ready for it. And if you do need us to come back next month and address this, if enough of y'all write in, let's just come back and we'll do that whole thing over again, fresh, with some of the information I've got about what's going on. So this is driven by your needs, not what I want to put out here. So if you get with Ariana and get enough of these requests, we'll do that for you. But this is a time to be very careful. And I hope next month we laugh and go, it wasn't a problem, in the month after that. But I think we have some substantial risk right now. And nobody thought that some guys with box cutters were going to take over a plane and run it in a building. I think the next plan is not going to be aircraft related. So I'm concerned.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for touching on that. Actually, that's very prevalent right now. It's always better to be prepared than anything. So make sure you just have all your ducks in a row, just like what Austin's saying. And like he was also saying, if you guys want to talk about it again or check out the video on our live channel for YouTube, then we also have the webinar from earlier this year. But we can always talk on it again. Even though we have something planned for next month, we could do another topic next month too.
Since I did that one, I've really that topic has evolved in my mind, and the thread has evolved, and the information I have to share is involved. And this war has set us up with something that's really kind of got my radar going on. The hairs in the back of my neck are going on. My spider senses are saying there could be some trouble on the horizon. I would like us as a group to be a little better prepared for it. Remember, we hope for the best, we plan for the worst, and everything will take care of itself, because there's certain things that are beyond our control. But the stuff we can mitigate and make sure we can get our family back and gathered around, this would be a good thing to talk about again. Not unnecessary repetition.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Alrighty, everyone. I'm going to wrap it up. But if you guys have any other questions, or if you're interested in attending Austin simulator training, which you talked about it, or more about Concealed Coalition courses or all of that, just email marketing@firearmslegal.com. I also have a form in the description. You could submit something through there, or just email marketing@firearmslegal.com. I am happy to help with any questions that you have. Also, if tonight's topic opened your eyes, we've got plenty more just like it. We host past webinars, situational awareness, active shooter survival, kind of like what we were just talking about, legal use of force, all of that, everyday carry breakdowns, some serious topics all the way to not so serious and just casual ones as well, but they're all available on our YouTube channel. So be sure to subscribe, check them all out, and all that fun stuff. But thank you everyone who joined us tonight. And a huge thank you again to Austin for sharing his time and insight to all of us once again. As always, everyone, protect yourself and we'll protect you. Have a great night. Night, everyone.